Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. Welcome to today's Agiloft webinar, How to Supercharge Your Contracting with Advanced Metrics. I'm Ellen Nendorf and I am founder of LPM Executive, where I work with corporate legal departments to establish and improve the legal operations function. And that covers the whole range of things from process improvement to technology. And a lot of that centers around using data to make good decisions around what to do differently or better or in a more effective way within a legal department. Joining me here today is Danielle Haugland, Global Alliance Director at Agiloft. Hi, Danielle.
Hey, Ellen, how are you today?
Doing well.
Great, thank you so much. As Ellen mentioned, I am the Global Alliance Director at Agiloft. I work with our large services partners to deliver a complete CLM solution to clients from implementation through to managed services. I am a former Big Law antitrust litigator. I joined Pangea 3, a pioneer in the ALSP space before ALSPs were cool, back in 2013, and one long and windy road later made my way to legal innovation, enterprise tech, and contract specialist here at Agiloft.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have a conversation today. We spoke earlier this month around metrics, and we're just continuing that today. Before we dive in, though, for our listeners, we do have questions available throughout the webinar. So as we're talking, feel free to drop those in, and we'll answer those in real time as best we can. And then we'll also reserve 15 minutes at the end to go ahead and answer any additional questions that you might have at that time. All right, so as I said earlier this month, January 13th, we talked about beginning metrics, how to really get started for those that may not be doing too much with their contract data yet. So getting a lay of the land, this is everything from contract volume to whether using company or third-party paper, looking at cycle times, just beginning to really see the landscape of your contracts and what's out there, what's going on and what's happening across the business with contracts. And so today we're going to take a deeper look into advanced metrics and where it can really make a powerful difference for the department and the business, as well as individual performance with regard to contracting. And so this really allows your department and the contract negotiators to be more proactive with contract negotiation. So it's really about understanding things before they happen so that you're not reacting, but you're really taking a leadership approach to your contract management and negotiations. So I will also say, just as a few caveats, and we talked about this with beginning metrics, but this is not like you must do these things to be good at metrics. So what we're going to talk about today doesn't mean you have to track these metrics. Really, you always want to consider your business goals first. So what's going on across the business, what's going on within the department, and what makes the most sense for the portfolio of contracts and work that you're handling. And then track the metrics that are going to help you achieve those goals, those targets. I also always feel it's compelled to say advanced does not mean better. So if you are a department that is just starting out and really you're just looking at how much do we have and how much, did we do on third-party paper, that's great. Really getting started, anything helps take that more proactive approach. And advanced just really implies that you already have a good set of data. You're already maybe comfortable looking at the data. You have some ideas of the basics, and you're really now starting to tie the metrics you're tracking to achieve business goals and measure those, and then continue to look at those and make a big improvement. So again, we'll walk through some examples, but it's not a specific list here. So with those caveats in mind, Danielle, where would you suggest is just a good starting place as you begin to think about that next level of metrics?
Well, picking up on what you had mentioned, definitely begin at the end. What do you want to achieve as a department, as a business? And that's going to drive what you measure and track. That said, I do have a few fave metrics. One of them, which is one that we touched on in the last session, is contract volume, but we're tweaking it to show the trend. This is a pretty basic metric, but it becomes advanced when you look at, like I said, contracting trends. This helps you with department planning and staffing. For example, looking at the chart here, you can see that there is a surge of contracting volumes in December. And so that lets you know, oh, okay, we need more resources, towards the end of the year. If you have data covering several years, you can potentially plan years ahead. And this provides predictability in budgets, and that, in my humble experience, makes everyone happy. You can also cross-reference contract volume with workload. That's the second graph here. So you can evenly distribute work and know who is available for surge staffing and the like. So this kind of takes your basic metrics that we talked about earlier this month and puts them into a trending bucket so that you can see what's coming and plan for it.
Yeah, I love that, Danielle. And this, your comment earlier about working for an ALSP before it was cool. This can also help with planning for alternative resources, right? So you've got your contract volume, it's going to be a particularly rough December. Maybe you also have a tremendous amount of renewals coming up and your workload is already really high. Maybe you're looking to use outside counsel. Maybe you're looking to leverage the alternative service providers, and you can schedule that and budget for it also well ahead of time.
Yep. Businesses like that.
And they do. They really do. They're more likely to keep the budget money coming too when not those big surprises.
Yeah.
And that actually, when we think about metrics, and especially the advanced metrics, taking the surprise out of everything, even if you're delivering bad news, like, hey, we are going to need to double outside counsel, this month. As long as people know and can plan, it is much better received than a surprise today, everything is exploding.
And it's based on data. Anytime you're asking for resources, you're going to have to provide a business case for it. And this, tracking trends helps you provide that business case.
Yeah, absolutely. So building then on that trend theme, Danielle, this is looking at just kind of general contract load across the department, but we can also look at trends with regards to specifics within the contract as well. What are your thoughts there for metrics?
Absolutely. So if we can jump to the next slide, we can take a look at one of my favorite metrics right now. And yes, I totally get that it's a little bit weird that I have favorites. And that is clause analysis. And this can lead to if you're analyzing clauses, can lead to significant improvement in the substance of contracts, but it can also cut down on negotiation time. The idea is super simple. Identify your most negotiated clauses and why. If, for example, we have the little red box around indemnification. If, for example, your standard indemnification provision is swapped out for fallback 83% of the time, it may be time for a new standard. And that eliminating that particular negotiation point, which just makes contracting faster and speeds up the velocity of business. In another example, if you know that limitation of liability, it always is the most negotiated provision, you can run more analytics to understand what the trends are with limitation of liability, have full visibility into that risk. So these types of metrics, like I said, help you with not only the substance and the quality of your contracting and reducing your risk, but can lead to pretty significant improvements in the speed of contracting.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I, in a former life, not long ago, was in sales and was on the sales side of contracting and worked with our counsel to negotiate, and which is a pretty, I think, frustrating order for counsel to have to work with lawyers turned sales reps. But there were a few contract provisions where they always got negotiated, even though we knew we could agree to one of three things. And if the first proposal came back from the prospective client and it was like our third choice, we'd still negotiate it. And every time I'm like, but we can agree to that. Like, let's, cut our time. And yes, you do want to get a good deal for the business, but if as a business you can say any of these three things is good for us, and let's just move forward and, to your point, focus on the big ticket items like limitation of liability, for example, give the wins where you can so that you can use the power on more important things.
Absolutely. And, having this type of information and really digging into, what clauses are truly your standard and what you can live with, that's going to help with automation as well, and self-service to your business. And again, all going towards speed of contracting. If you can provide your business with an easy button, if you will, that's like, all right, you don't have to negotiate this provision. We've already done the hard part for you. We've already looked into the data and know that 90% of the time, that's not on any of these slides, but this is an example, 90% of the time we agree to this, then, that can be your easy button, and that can form the basis of automation for your business.
Yeah, and you said it earlier, but again, just backing everything up with the data. So even if there are terms that the business prefers more than another, even though you can live with both, if you can show that, well, we never actually agree to the preferred term, we always take that fallback, and we are continuing to be successful showing up with that data, as opposed to someone's feeling or just kind of gut reaction on what really happens is a lot more powerful.
Yep.
All right, so then beyond business trends, and we're moving really quickly through these, but hopefully we're sparking some curiosity in you to just begin to think about different ways you can look at the data that you have on hand. This is performance, and by performance, we're looking at both individual performance and then actual contract performance. So starting with individual performance, and I feel like this always maybe gets the reaction of like internal time tracking. I used to work with e-billing tools and looking at the discussion on whether in-house should begin to track their time, I feel like creates the same reaction as talking about individual performance metrics, but really looking to see if you're negotiating effectively. And so, one example of this would be contracts come in, a lot of contract lifecycle management tools are going to do a risk assessment score on that contract and let you know, hey, what is, like, if we just took it as is, what are we looking at for potential risk compared to what we prefer as a company? And then after everything is negotiated and executed, you can score it again and really see the impact you made on moving that risk score down. And that's just one example, right? So being willing to look at, am I being effective? Where am I being more effective? Are particular clauses moving better than others? Really can help drive overall performance. And I think that as attorneys, that's not something that typically we were trained on in law school. When I practiced, there were no metrics. The only metrics I had were billable hours. Like, did I have my billable hours or did I not? And you better believe that you had the graphs and you had to track and know how many more you had to go. But that was really it. And it wasn't until I moved into a sales capacity where I really did have to rely on metrics to look at performance and daily, coming back to this every day. How am I doing? Okay, where can I get better? Where do I need to make a shift and a change? And again, that insight allowed me to be proactive in meeting goals for year end. And so we're really just talking about where can we do that from the legal perspective. And it's not something to be afraid of, but it's just something to be making you better, making the business better, and driving things forward there too. So, really just beginning to think about where can I track my own performance.
Absolutely. And one of the things that legal departments are doing now, and is, as you mentioned, as attorneys, we're not really used to it. Legal departments are sending out CSAT surveys to their customer base, the business. And it's providing really interesting and helpful results. And you can do it a couple of different ways. We're getting a little bit outside the bounds of CLM right now, so I'll be very brief. But you can either do it in a traditional CSAT format, like at the end of a communication and email, you can put the little stars at the bottom, or you can do a sentiment analysis. And that really drives insights at scale. And at the end of the day, it's axiomatic that for a CLM solution to be effective, it has to be used. Adoption is critical to success, and the ability to monitor customer satisfaction and adjust processes at the macro level, but also measure individual performance is just critical.
Yeah, and I do think that's a fantastic point, just the how did I do feedback, and that again can be scary. Maybe it was a really protracted negotiation, maybe it was a really tough prospective client or vendor there, and you'll have those answers, right? But if you're not asking those questions, you're not going to uncover ways where you can make the contract negotiation process faster. This took a long time. Well, where did we negotiate where we know we always accept fallback? Where could we have done that tighter and faster? And so again, just being willing to ask that tough question, did I do the best I could? And then being willing to take that feedback and work towards that continuous improvement.
Yep.
So then from there, and just keeping an eye on our time here, looking at then actual contract performance and the same idea there. So creating this feedback loop, ready? You might have had a great negotiation. You felt like you got good terms, but then checking back in 6 months down the road, did we actually perform? Did the vendor perform? And if the answer is no, then as good as those terms looked, they're not really helpful for the business. And so again, getting that business feedback loop with the business throughout the life cycle of the contract to know for the next time for the renewal, where can we make improvement? And just to give some color and an example to that, I'm thinking about uptime. If you're working with a vendor and there's a struggle with uptime, but you don't really have a way to move off this vendor, negotiating a higher uptime is not going to give you any better results, right? It's just putting expectations on a vendor that already that they won't be able to meet. So then maybe look at credit or response SLAs. How are they going to support you when things are down? Are they going to give you some of your money back? Those types of things. So you can still get a good result, even if performance isn't there, but where there's going to be performance challenges, and you've built that into the contract so that everyone can be successful ahead of time.
Right. And I see we're up at time, but just a final point on that. We've all seen this. This happens every day, day in and day out, SLAs that are rarely achieved. So having that data to back it up, like, okay, this is never, this is never happening, can really make your contracts more meaningful.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And just because you feel like it should be one way, if that's not working, having the data to show it and being comfortable to say, we're going to do it this different way, which feels new and different and maybe more lenient in this one way than we have traditionally been, but we think it's going to drive better results. And then track those too. Maybe it didn't make a difference, but you'll know, and you can again keep that continuous process improvement going.
Yep.
All right. So with that, we'll move to the Q&A, but before we do that, I just want to kind of recap here what we're talking about with advanced metrics. We're talking about trend data, anticipating when there's going to be demand, making sure you've got the right resources at the right time on the right work, being able to plan for that, budget for that. Then diving deeper into trends from the contract clause perspective, being able to identify better ways to negotiate and see where you're coming off those contract terms, and again being proactive and just not wasting time on that. And then building on that, looking at performance, both individual performance and overall contract performance, to get the best result for the business on the whole. So with that, Danielle, did you have any last thoughts? And we've got a few questions that came in and we'll get into those.
I don't. Let's go right into questions given the time.
All right. So one question that came in was, what are the top or most used advanced metrics?
That's a really great question. And the honest answer is it depends on your business objectives. As we mentioned today, hopefully we've given you some useful ideas. But as I said in the course of the program, my favorite is the clause analysis, deviation analysis. What percentage of the time are your contracts deviating from your standard paper? And then what are you going to do about it? So that's one of the top ones for me right now.
Excellent. Another one that came in, Danielle, and I'll pose this one to you. How are you tracking SLAs in Agiloft? Is that something you can speak to, or should we follow up with more information?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We track it through our obligations management bar, and I can follow up with more information on that.
Okay, fantastic. Another one, the graphs shown earlier, the metrics that we've used, are they built into Agiloft, or if not, where are they constructed?
So one of the great things about Agiloft is any field is reportable. So those, yes, they are built into Agiloft. We generated those graphs from within Agiloft. And we just basically picked the fields that we wanted to report on and plug them in and popped out a graph.
Fantastic. And Danielle, is it fair to say that they can, reach out to a customer success contact at Agiloft or Agiloft support for help on how to pull some of those?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Another one, we aren't yet advanced. How do we get started using metrics?
Start with getting the lay of the land, your contract volume on, third party versus your paper, third party paper versus your paper, where contracts are coming from by business unit, by contract type, things like that. And we covered a lot of this in our webinar earlier this month, and happy to share that out again. It's also on our website, but that's where I would start. Get the basics down first, and then you'll almost naturally dive into more advanced analytics. So, for example, we mentioned the trend analysis on volume. Once you have your volume data in there, you can look back over time and see what that's doing. Is it spiking? Is it dropping? And again, that's going to lead you to better staffing decisions and predictability in budgets.
Yeah, fantastic. I will add to one other place that I feel like is an obvious way on where to start is like, what kind of questions are you getting? If you're in meetings, there are people asking you, if you're passing in the hallways, someone asking you some questions, begin to just track those, see what comes in by email. That can give you some really good insight into what people are interested in. So especially if you're a company that hasn't largely been driven by metrics in this area and you want to start getting people interested in what can be done, start tracking what those questions are, then begin with those basic metrics that way. And then you can get people like, oh, look at that. Oh yeah, look what we're doing, and especially if you can get some big wins, like look at how we're always, our goal is to negotiate X, and look, we're doing that most of the time, and that's a great way to generate that excitement internally, because, data and lawyers and legal, like sometimes those don't always spark joy, if I may say. And so, really meeting people where they are and what their curiosity is can be a helpful way to get people engaged in metrics.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, I'll just kind of slow roll here to see if any further questions have come in. But we're always happy to chat after the fact as well. The advanced metrics can be so tailored to your department, to your business goals, that, a more direct conversation can be helpful if you're feeling stuck or not quite sure where to begin. But again, these are ideas in the big to help you get started on the next level. We did have one more come in here. Where can you get a hold of the previous webinars? And those are all on the Agiloft website. I think we can link, I'll cue my behind the scenes tech folks here. I think we can send a link out to the prior webinars, but just Agiloft events where you registered for this, when you'll see a link, they're available on YouTube to watch the playback there too. So you can catch the beginning metrics as well as this advanced one as well. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. We do have more great webinars upcoming, and so we hope to have you join us again. And just got a note from the tech folks. The replay will post in the email coming to you after the fact here, and so you can link to the other webinars that way easily. So thanks again, and have a great end to the week. Danielle, thank you so much for the conversation today.
Thank you, Ellen. Always a pleasure.